check-in. Okay.
Do I?
I was just looking for the word check-in.
Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As soon as you get the QR, bring it up to the front. I'll help you if you need to. If you can't figure out how to get it, it should be the letter S on your 7-digit ID. Should bring up your QR code. And you can save that image onto your phone. That way, from now on, you can check in with from your phone photos gallery on your phone versus bringing up the app each time.
Should bring it up here.
Yep. You just tap the green button and then put the QR code in front of it.
Okay.
Yep. All right. So we'll take time to do that. The check-in thing will be available for everybody 15 minutes prior to class.
Wait,
from now on. Do you want to?
Wait, what's this for?
To check into the class. And if you need help, you can bring your phone up and I'll help you. You should be able to access it with your S number once you go to the website on the directions on that check-in link.
Is this the right set? It's not letting me for some reason.
So 5
Yeah, that's the right number.
7588.
Mhm. Oh. I wasn't doing it for me.
It's all right.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
So I'm sorry, where do we find that code? Or was it pay attention?
On that check-in link, but it's myattendance.today is the website.
So it won't work
Check-in
out.
link? Where's the?
You'll need to use your smartphone.
Okay.
Yep.
So
The
where's
link
the-
at the top of our course. You'll have to refresh it if you can't see it. Refresh the web browser. Tap the green button. Good. So we'll take a few minutes to get that done first before we get started. And we'll do that each week. When you guys come in, you can just the iPad will be up here for you to check in as soon as you come in from now on. Speed things up, hopefully, on take and roll and all that good stuff. I'd go portrait.
Portrait. See, cut them cuts it off.
Yeah. Oh, yours is only taking off the whole
Yeah,
width, it looks like.
That's what.
Why isn't mine bringing up a QR code?
The letter S in your 7-digit ID.
Yeah, just do
Here.
Here, I'll have you use mine.
Well, I can save it for my images.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if that doesn't work, let me know. I can send it to you.
See.
And I've noticed the smaller screens of it
Yeah.
sometimes.
No, maybe not. Yeah.
Okay. I will go on to it from my phone.
Okay.
What's your 7-digit ID?
S0494 822.
822?
Yeah.
Oh, click on. Oh. It's weird. You can do,
There you go. Use mine.
well, my phone is really, really bad. It's really slow, so I don't know if you're gonna be able to get it, but
What's that happening?
it's just a really, really bad phone.
Oh, gotcha. I can text it to you.
Okay.
I'll text you
Oh,
yours.
yeah, all right.
Can we do that?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, so I put my email and then say submit, right?
Do you want to know?
I submitted, but it didn't
You have
work.
to put the letter S as your 7-digit ID and then hit submit.
Oh, that one. I did that
Mhm.
wrong.
What's your phone number? Okay, I just sent it to you.
Now I just say get this.
Just hit get QR code. It should bring it up in a bigger picture and then drag it down. That's what you scan you'll tap the green button there on the app. And what's your S number?
S0424272.
Am I doing it wrong? Did I take it?
Hillary? Does it say your name at the top?
Yeah.
Okay, you're good.
Now what do I do with this thing? So I keep it? Or is it gonna be different every time?
Nope, it'll be the same. Just save it to your photos.
Oh.
Okay, I'll have you put it in that. You can send it to yourself.
I have a question. Do you take late work or no?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep.
Okay, because I turned in like three things today.
Okay, yeah, I'll get prompted.
Okay, I was
Yep.
like, I didn't
If you
know.
want to take this over to your phone, once you get that, take it over here and see if we can check in.
How do I save it to my photos? I don't have a photo on there. Or do you hold, oh, you gotta hold it down.
Save image, and you should have it now into your photo gallery.
There. Who knows where it's at? It's probably in a big one. I'll find it. I know it's
So you can collections,
I know it might be in this one.
camera roll.
Mhm. Nope,
Nope. No,
because
sure
it was
does.
your last
I don't
one.
think I have enough service because I have
Oh, yeah?
T-Mobile, so I haven't gotten the image.
Here's
I
my
have a
phone.
really bad phone.
There's mine.
Is this my thing on here?
Yeah, that's yours.
Okay,
I think so.
cool.
Yeah, I think it's yours.
So what do I do? Just
Is there a green button up there?
Yeah.
Tap the green button and then you'll scan the QR.
It'll go, but it might take a long time for mine too.
Yeah, go portrait like that. There you go. Now back it up.
oh, okay,
There you go.
cool.
Got it?
So funny, thanks.
It's a weird phone. I'm just learning it. I always had a Samsung.
Uh-huh. Okay, so it should be on your phone. I'm saving it now to your photos.
Okay.
And now it's in your photos. Boom.
There.
Try that.
Again, you want me to do it twice?
Yeah, do it again to make sure it works. Yes.
Okay, what do we?
The letter S and your 7-digit ID.
Yep, it worked.
All right, cool. You're good to go.
Oh, thanks.
Yep, and then go ahead and tap submit. Tap the get QR code button. Should bring up a bigger screen. Yep. Scroll down. The other way, up, I guess. There you go. And use that QR code on this right here. And you can save that QR code to your phone later. That way you don't have to bring it up on the app. Should be a green button. Tap it. Tap the green button.
Oh, yeah.
Nope, on this.
Oh, here.
And your phone. Go ahead and make sure this thing's centered. There you go, Michael.
Okay.
Now use that and put it in front of the screen. Okay, now press and hold that photo to where it saves in your photo on your phone. Press and hold it.
Well, where?
Press and hold the screen with your phone. Yep. Mind if I look at your phone real quick? You got an Android? Oh, it's up. I think it's up on the right. Let's see. Do you know how to do a screenshot on your phone?
No, all I do is make calls.
Anybody know how to do a screenshot on an Android phone?
What?
Screenshot on Android?
So it should, yeah, it should be the home button and the volume down, but
Just hit the home button. What now?
the volume down button.
Volume down, got it. All right, volume down button.
Volume.
Right there.
Volume.
It's not that.
That's not it. What's
Does it have the lock button on the side?
yeah?
So it's the lock button anywhere?
Uh-uh.
Yeah, right here. It should be
Is that
the
it?
top one and the volume down.
Volume down button.
Or
Okay.
it could be both the volume buttons.
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't had an Android
Let's go
phone in a long
back.
time.
What web browser did you use? Do you know?
Google.
Well, let's do it this way. What's your S number?
S0467 959.
Okay, I'm just gonna text this to you. All right. Go ahead, put in your phone number there for me. All right, check your text messages, make sure you got it. You gonna do that?
Yeah, I know. Now it's the service. It all depends on the service.
Okay. Where do you normally get your text messages at?
The text would pop
Okay.
up. It didn't pop up yet.
Okay. Well, tell you what, till it pops up, well, I'll let you use this. I'll use my phone tonight to get in. So use my phone, go ahead and press that green button. Press that green button there. And put the QR code in front of the. There you go, you're checked in. So let me know before you leave tonight you got that.
Okay.
Sound good?
All right.
Okay, everybody get checked in? All right, cool. So we'll use that each week. The iPad will be up here for you to access. Also, from here on out, what we're going over on the overhead is recorded in each week's module. We're in week 3 this week, so I've already put the link in week 3, which is what we're going over tonight. If you go into week 3, which is the settings, week 3 settings and contrast, there's a Kahoot link at the bottom. You can access that from your phone. And here is the PIN number. So you go to kahoot.it from your phone, put in that PIN number. And this is a real quick, fun way to review terms we went over last week to make sure you got it. Put in something creative. Naughty names beware, you will be kicked out.
Kahoot.com?
No.
No.
Kahoot.it.
Okay.
So Android screenshot we learned was the top switch volume down, correct? Top switch volume down? Is that right? One of the ways? Yeah, depends on the version of Android you have. Okay. I got some good creative ones there.
Okay, wait, I'm on Eagle now. How do I get there?
Do I?
Sorry.
What now?
I said I'm on Eagle now. How do I get there?
from your phone, or you can go on your website. You go on a browser to kahoot.it. Figure it out? You can go to any web browser and go to kahoot.it, or from your mobile phone, either one. Either one will work. Let's see. Got 16. So when we get to 16, we will start the Kahoot. And the way the Kahoot works is you'll have some questions that'll show up. You have 20 seconds to answer. Those are the way you get a higher score if you answer a true statement, and it has to be the faster than anybody else. And so that's how you get the higher score. All right, a couple more. I should have 18. No, 17. All right, two more. Did you figure it out? All right. All right, so let's see some of the names while we're still waiting on for you to get in here. Oh, pretty creative names. Yowza, Kofif, Cambam, Molranium. We'll wait for one more and then we'll begin. And a few more seconds and I'm going to start it without you. If you need help, let me know or let your neighbor know. Otherwise, we'll get started here in a second. Okay. Here we go. All about digital photography, 10 questions, 20 questions, 20 points or 20 seconds. Choose a bogus classification of camera. Prosumer, point and shoot, DSLR, point and aim. Bogus meaning fake. Not real. The answer, point and aim. DSLR is real, prosumer is real, point and shoot's real. All right, so Cambam's leading the pack here, then followed by Alex, Molranium, Bialza, and Gar8210. Point and shoot cameras make up about what percentage of cameras sold? 70, 80, 90, 60. Point and shoot. All right, 90 was the correct answer. We got on the leaderboard, Cambam still leading. Yowza, Alex, Gar820. Mary's now part of the top 5. Prosumers usually have blank. Large telephoto zoom, extended zoom, 1 terabyte of memory. All right. On this one here was the extended zoom was the correct answer. And basically that is the prosumer level. Large telephoto zoom, memory is real expensive. Terabyte of memory. Most cameras can't fit that. Next, well, let's see. We got leaderboard. Pretty much the same folks, I think. Well, Alex at the top. Gar8210, Cambam, Yowza, Mary. Sets DSLR apart can be more than one answer. Sets DSLR apart. Larger sensor, removable lens, always black. Can be more than one answer. All right. The answers could have been larger sensor or removable lenses. So everybody got that correct. Leaderboard. Whoa. Somebody answered Gar answered pretty quick on that lightning round. Streaking ahead with 4 in a row, Gar. Gar8210, Yowza, Cambam, and Breeze back on the is in the leaderboard for the first time. DSLR has larger sensor, which means larger lenses, shutter, or pixels. Lenses, shutter, or pixels, larger sensor. "20 seconds. All right, the answer is pixels. Remember the sensors, a misnomer about cameras is a lot of times we think it's megapixels that really make up the quality. It's actual the sensor that helps create the robust megapixels or robust pixels. So Alex, Gar8210, Cambam, Yowza, and Bree still on the leaderboard. Determines the size, total size dimensions of the image recorded by a camera. Micropixels, megapixels, nanopixels. All right, megapixels is the answers on that one. Most of you got that right. There's a leaderboard. What has the most impact when making a good shot? Correct exposure, correct light, correct white balance. The most impact. Exposure, light, white balance. Key is in the picture too, by the way, on this. A lot of these, by the way. All right, correct exposure, which at least got the correct one on this one. Correct exposure, remember the three-legged stool we talked about, which does include light, but it's just one component, makes the best shot. Okay, so Alice, Gar8210, Yowza, Cambam, and Bree. Tough round, 7 players lost their answer streak of 3. Bummer. All right, how long the camera sees the picture? ISO, shutter speed, aperture, exposure. How long the camera sees the picture? ISO, shutter speed, aperture, exposure. All right, shutter speed. Most of you got that right. Remember, that's if you have a faster shutter speed and you stop motion, people jumping in the air. Slow shutter speed allows for looking like movement in a photo. So we have Alice, Gar821, Yowza, Cambam, and Bree. Gar821 is back in the game with 3 in a row, whoever Gar821 is. Defined as a hole or opening through which light is admitted. ISO, shutter speed, aperture, exposure. And they have f-stops in there as well in that one. ISO, shutter speed, aperture, exposure. All right, aperture, and that's the one, remember, as the f-stop. The larger number, the smaller opening, the smaller number, the larger the opening on that. So Alex, Gar8210, Yowza, Cambam, and Bree still on the leaderboard. Refers to the light sensitivity of the sensor. ISO, aperture, shutter speed, exposure. Again, look at the picture. It will help. Or not. Yes, ISO is the answer on that. ISO, remember, allows to basically fakes out the sensor on controlling light sensitivity to the light around it. Shutter speed, again, the whether you have movement or non-movement in an image. Aperture, the hole in the camera that allows the light to come in, either small or large. And then exposure has really all 3 to take into effect. So results of this awesome quiz was Gar8210, hoo-hoo, 8,978 points. Then 8,947 points, Alex, followed by Yowza. So good job, everybody. All right, so we'll do that each game. It's kind of fun. Each week we'll do that. All right, so when you come in each week, you have your QR code now to check in. Everybody knows that. The iPad will be up here 15 minutes prior to class starting, at least that, if not before. And we'll have a Kahoot each week as well to help get started. Last week, you went home and took pictures of each other. I'm still putting together that collage because I had a super busy day today. We did. Well, I can let you know about it now since it was approved. I'll bring up the website. So we're now getting seed money for what you see here on the overhead, which is a bus, Rock Valley College bus here. We're getting seed money to get a mobile bus to drive around Rockford. We got a large portion of that money today with the presentation I did. And so communiversity.me is the website we're using. The hashtag is going to be my RVC Tech Bus. And on the Tech Bus will be things like Hour of Code, Ozobot, Python, robotics. We'll drive around Rockford, middle schools, and events for people to come in. The bus looks really cool as far as, see if this came up here. I can show you some of the images. Turn off the sound here. So I'll show you some of the insides of the bus so we can kind of look at it. That's the inside. Isn't that awesome? That's a 15-seater. We're going to be in or 13-seater. We're going to be getting 15 dual boot from Mac or PC. In the back, this one only has a 46-inch monitor or TV. Ours will be 80 inches. It's ADA compliance. There at the back on the right or on the left on your side is the handicap accessibility. So we'll be able to do GED classes in there, drive around Rockford as well, maybe have folks sign up for classes, hold up for different uses we can use it for. It's basically like a driving billboard is what it's going to be, but it'll also help areas of Rockford that maybe do not have the education facilities around them and they can't come here. And so we'll go to them to do fun classes like the Hour of Code and Ozobot to get kids involved in technology. And that's a picture of Harper College, actually, is a local college down south that had this since 2004. And that's what they do. They just drive around the city, have different events. And as you can see here, it's handicap accessible. And so we're in the beginning stages, day one approval today to get it started. So you guys are the first to actually hear or see pictures of it. We posted some stuff today, but you might have heard of this downtown Rockford. There's a minister, Sam Sarpeya, that does a mobile lab that's for a peace initiative. And it's basically a mobile lab that was given to him by the police department. And inside of it is computers, a music lab, and he goes all over Rockford, middle schools. We're joining with him because he's already been doing this for a while. Last year alone, I think he reached 6,000 people in the city of Rockford with that mobile bus. And it's a pretty small bus. It's only 30 feet in length and enough for maybe 8 Chromebooks or something in there, 7. So, but he's done a great job and kids love him. And so we'll be joining forces with him and doing a lot of good stuff when we get it. This is some of the coding events some of you have been to, the Hour of Code. What I had to do today was basically show a prototype of things that we've already been doing. This is Spectrum School here in Rockford, good little school, middle school. And then that's an actual class in the Harper bus. So anyway, share that with you. Pretty cool, I think. All right. Tomorrow is the first Girls Who Code event. We're going to be meeting over here. Any girls in here, women that want to be involved in helping in that, you're more than welcome to come. It's going to be 4 to 6 every Wednesday starting tomorrow. It's targeting a girl 6 through 12 grade in middle school, high school. I think we have 15 coming tomorrow. And 4 to 6, and we'll have you out right at 6 if you want to come to check it out anyway. I think I've got 3 college students helping me right now, and then we'll have a couple programmers from town, Jenny Conkle from Woodward, and then a couple local developers. And so Rockford GWC is Girls Who Code website, and it's basically a nationwide movement to get more girls involved in coding. I've been trying to get approved for our campus to be a Girls Who Code campus for about a year now. We were just approved in November, so it's a pretty big deal. And so if you'd like to come for the kickoff tomorrow, it's 4 to 6 in this room. We will have hors d'oeuvres and snacks over here for you. And again, you might, at the end of it, go like, oh, I'd like to be involved in this or help out. That'd be great. And so, again, 4 to 6. If you have any questions, let me know, or you can go to rockfordgwc.com to find out more about it and sign up if you want to. All right. So tonight we're going to talk about exposure, leading line of thirds in our notes. First off, so we talked last week and even in the quiz today about exposure. Exposure being a 3-legged stool of ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. And exposure is that stool that causes us to have a good photo. And so it's real important to understand then how to create a good photo then. And so that's what we're going to cover first here with exposure. So light is good when it comes to photos. And exposure basically is just the amount of light exposed to a film or image sensor. And for our purposes for this class, it's image sensor. It's controlled by film speed in film cameras and image sensor in digital cameras or smartphones. It's also controlled by shutter speed and aperture. The amount of exposure is dependent upon the sensitivity of the chip or the image sensor in the camera, or if it's film, the actual film. So ISO, again, ISO, an aperture here that is showing here is a time delay here of how long a shutter can be open. So this example here, 1.3 seconds all the way to 15 seconds. You notice how as it goes across, the longer the exposure, the lighter the image, even in a dark night. Proper exposure can make or break a picture. Exposure can change the appearance of a picture dramatically, both good and bad. So in this example here, you've got the on the top left, a desert area, top right a desert area, bottom. It's the same image, same exact setting basically for all three. You'll notice though the difference is the exposure value, or the EV value is called on your camera, and the EV value a lot of times looks like this on a camera, plus minus or square, plus minus, or your camera will just have on it a setting on the phone, EV, and you can do negative or plus on the increments. So you'll notice on this one, if you're going to do a -1, it's pretty dark. 0, yeah. 0 is supposed to be the way the light actually is, but it doesn't always denote that. +1 actually can make it look brighter than it is, and +2, so on and so forth. So in all actuality, this could be what it actually looks like. But this could, by adding a +1, you notice how it clears it up quite a bit. not only clears it up, but you'll notice the sky in +1 is kind of blurred together as a gray blah type of thing, which we'll talk about why that is as the semester goes on. But you're basically whitewashing the image. Histograms. Most of your cameras, including your smartphones, can have the ability, smartphone apps can have the ability for histograms to show up on them. And I told you this week, I told you about an app that I recommend, mobile app for iOS and Android both. A Camera Plus Plus is an app I recommend for those using your phones. Camera Plus Plus is a good app to use. It has a lot of what we'll go over this semester built into the app. So a histogram basically gives you an image like this. And so you may have seen this when you've done Photoshop. Those of you familiar with Photoshop, how you can bring in the levels of photo, and it'll show you the histogram of that photo. And then in Photoshop, you're able to drag in some bars here to make the image look nicer. But histograms are one of the most important components of photography to understand it anyway. It's a graph basically that gives us relative light and relative darkness in a photo. Relative light and relative darkness. So each square represents a pixel of brightness. So when you see the square, the histogram displays every pixel collected on that image. True 0 is black. 255 is pure white. All over here is pure white, black 0. Tonal range is this part here. And it's kind of the peak of the histogram. The tonal range is where most of the pixels are found. And tonal range is basically going to be, should be anyway, where the subject is located in the picture that you're taking a photo of, but not always the case because it determines by light in that photo, by how much light's in that photo. So here we have an example here of a photo. I'll see if I can bring this down a little bit more. So in the photo, it's pinpointing to an arrow from where it's actually located on the image to the histogram. So here, it's actually here. That light's actually here. So on and so forth, all throughout. And you'll notice on this one, what it basically does, if you notice, it kind of reverses what the image looks like you're taking a photo of. Reverse it the other way. Really, just by looking at this histogram, and we'll talk more about this tonight, it's a very low light photo just by looking at it. I don't even have to see the photo because a good histogram will actually look like this. It'll start out kind of slow and kind of peak up and then come back down. This one just kind of peaks here, kind of flat lines, and then comes back up a little bit. So you can determine by that it's a fairly low light, few mild tones, few shadows, plenty of shadows, but few mild tones. This is an average histogram, meaning a pretty normal one, a pretty average, okay histogram. Plenty of midtones, the ideal subject because the camera can get most of the tones. Most camera meters have no problem reading this scene. And you'll notice in the histogram, you got that peak I talked about. Kind of starts out slow, goes up to a mountain peak, and it comes down. I can tell just by the histogram, it's good lighting, it's a good exposure. And so once you trust histograms and know how to read a histogram, you can help, it helps you a lot when you're taking your photos. Because you can actually, most of your cameras and apps will give you a preview of what a histogram looks like before you take the photo. So you can actually adjust things before you take the photo all the way.
That's on our smartphones too.
Yep, on most smartphones and smartphone apps. The one I mentioned you can set up as well. This one here is an example of what's called high key and low key exposure. On the left, we have a Dalmatian on a beach, a white beach at noon. Okay, sunny white beach. So you'll notice it's peaked, but it's to the right. Okay, peaked and to the right meaning it's a high key And by that meaning it's going to be whitewashed for the most part. You know, it's going to be whitewashed. On the right one, it's left peak, meaning it's low key, a lot of darkness and shadows. And one of the things it talks about on the next slide is the fact that things can become so bad when it comes to overexposure that it's beyond repair, like the bars of this gate shadow are beyond repair and they're clipped. So underexposed, Dalmatian, overexposed, the room with light coming in. And you can see both on the histogram. You'll notice on the right, the clipped highlights will be jagged in nature. This right here, clipped highlight, will be jagged in nature. And those are pretty much unrepairable when it comes to post-production. The left is underexposed. You can still read the image, but it's not the best. A lot of wasted space on the image. So clipped highlights, as I mentioned earlier, generally can never be recovered. Because those bars there at the bottom are so bad, you literally have to fix it. You'd have to go in and manually draw lines or something by hand or something like that in Photoshop. Because they're clipped to the place to where they're missing spots throughout the and some of them aren't even readable here at all. Contrast. Low contrast and high contrast. One of the last we'll be doing is on contrast. And basically it's the difference between brightness and darkness in a scene. So the top one you'll notice is low contrast. It's very blurry and hard to know sometimes what it is. High contrast is sharp, but very pixelated and kind of jaggedy, you'll notice. It kind of looks like there's literal jags in the water, even though there isn't. And then this one just kind of blurs everything out. So on the left image is low contrast. Images tend to be flat or dull looking. Pictures taken during a fog, maybe, like we had some here recently. A lot of fog. Look pretty cool. On the pixogram or the histogram, you'll notice there's literally no valley. There's no valley up to the mountain. It's just mountain. That's it. You got nothing, mountain, nothing. And so when you see that, you know that there's a low contrast, low lighting. The right, high contrast, you have your mountain, but you'll notice there's a lot of white space here before and after, before the valley starts up. And that's going to tell you it's going to be a high contrast. You'll also notice in the image of the histogram on the right, it's very jagged edges, really jagged edges. That's where you get the pieces like this in the image. That's denoting these jagged edges on the histogram. So this one actually splits a photo into threes. It's one photo, three histograms. So the top, just the boat only. You'll notice a fairly flat histogram, not a lot of depth to it, or shadows, or brightness, or highlights. The middle, a little better, but still pretty dull. And it's going to be the low contrast type. And then the bottom is more of the high contrast type, where it's going to be kind of jaggedy edges, jaggedy photos. And that's actually, you can tell the difference here between this shadow in the water and this here. Blurry, jaggedy edges. So this here basically is a top, middle, bottom histogram put together to make a good histogram on the left. So put all three of the ones we just looked at in one histogram, the whole picture together looks fairly decent. So let's work some examples here of histograms as far as what they look like in different scenes. So here's a farm scene, pasture maybe scene. You got pretty good day, low clouds, pretty good lighting. And the histogram starts out pretty good, peaks to the mountain, but then does these things right here and then back here. And that's actually because of over in this area, the sun is kind of whitewashing some of it. Not a bad histogram though, not terrible. So it's got pretty good contrast to that one. This is just a flat mode of a moth, kind of an aerial overview of one. You'll notice this one here is going to be kind of on the dull end of things, and not real much to it, not a lot of shadows, not a lot of contrast to that photo. So Goldilocks and the three histograms. Too dark, underexposed, kind of peaks to the left. Too light, underexposed, peaks to the right. Just right, kind of like this. And you'll notice it's not a perfect peak like I put earlier. So this is okay. As long as you have it coming up, going down, and it's roughly in the middle. And it doesn't have to be a perfect mountain kind of view. The main thing is on correct exposure that you have in the middle of the tonal range, which remember the tonal range is right here. Tonal range is right here. You have the bulk of the black dots showing up here in the tonal range means you're going to have a good photo, good exposure. This example here gives showing the clipped highlights, the dull highlights of a cloudy day, overcast. It kind of looks almost like the sun is on the left side there pushing through, and clouds underneath it. And there's really only so much you can do. Yes?
Yeah, if you go back at one slide, how do you know if, why don't you go back one? I know that you have some that seems too dark or too light. Well, how do you know if it isn't anything like the Dalmatian example where it was just high key or low key?
We haven't got into that yet.
Okay.
High key and low key. But too dark and too underexposed, too light, overexposed, your histograms will always look that way. I mean, there's not enough light in that photo. So this one here, you'll note that again, you have some tonal ranges here, but notice you also have this over here at the peak, which is going to denote a low contrast, which is going to give you this kind of a blurred type of look on the histogram. Same thing here. The grass on this one looks pretty clear, but everything beyond that is kind of clipped and high contrast. So this one actually has a little bit of both, low contrast, high contrast, both. So low contrast, we do this over here with kind of a blur yuck. High contrast right here is going to be in this area here. This stuff here, which is actually pretty good lighting, is going to be right in here. This histogram right in here. That one, you'll notice, it's hard to see it, I know on the overhead, but it gives it kind of an artistic kind of look to the horizon. It has both the underexposed, overexposed, which kind of looks like a film negative on the end result. And so this one is a pretty good sky, but it's the person's inside like a cave taking the photo, going out. And it's going to be definitely showing on the histogram the underexposed part, which is all the black. The only good part is on the upper middle where you see some sky and beyond. That's that little blurb in the middle of the histogram, meaning there is some good exposure in this photo. And it's referring to this right here in the middle.
Is that because it's got the jagged edges on that one?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the middle one. Yeah, and really, this really doesn't. The jaggedness of the mountain really doesn't, unless it's really jagged, meaning it's clipped. That's going to be okay. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth on that mountain. So here's kind of a cool one. This kind of reminds me of like E.T. Phone Home, the E.T. movie. Remember that one? Where you see the movie, they get E.T. on his bicycle, kid in the bicycle. Anyway, this one on your screen, if you're looking at it, it kind of gives a bluish more tint, I believe, than on the overhead. And kind of gives a cool effect, I think. Very, 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 very much underexposed, though. But I think it's a cool artistic effect. And there are sometimes in photography, you want to break the rules to make the picture look like you want it to look. And that's fine. We've all seen this around this area anyway. Not too bad this season, but, wintertime, snow, midday, snow-covered trees, snow on the ground. It just looks, maybe snowing at the time. It's just whitewashed. Everything's whitewashed. It's going to be overexposure for sure. We definitely see it. But still, I think it's a cool picture. I like the outcome of the photo. And again, histograms aren't going to fix things for you. It just tells you the way it is. It's a gauge, basically. It's not going to fix anything for you. But it's kind of good to know how to read it, I think, or understand it a little bit anyway. Here we've taken pictures like this, all of us, right? By a telephone pole or whatever, outside gathering in the summer. And everyone take a family photo before you leave, and it ends up looking like this. Everybody looks pretty good, but then everything behind is jet black, right? It's just like a black blanket behind you or something. And this denotes it. Now the kid looks pretty good as far as the tonal range. The pole that he's on, pretty good tonal range. Everything else is pitch black, and that's what you're going to see on the left there, showing the underexposure. But it does have some good tonal ranges in it, and that would be what I just mentioned. Okay, the kid, the pole, all good tonal ranges. And by the way, your cameras, most of them will have a setting called night on the white balance, night photos or something like that, where it'll, even your smartphone apps will do that, where basically it will make up for it, allow the camera to be open, the lens will be open more, so let more light in during a time to where you can see more of the back end. But usually on those camera settings, you have to have a tripod because you have a camera shake. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of blur on the photo. Outdoor photos. This was actually, could be taking a rock cut or something, or maybe over one of the parks. You'll notice you're like, well, that's not too bad. But you'll notice the trees. Okay, the water part here, this here is pretty good. But everything else is totally underexposed. So when you see this part here, the tonal ranges, that's right here. All the underexposed stuff is this right here. Not a bad picture. It just shows you what the histogram looks like with that. So if we change the shutter speed here to 1/60th of a second with an f-stop 2.8, ISO 200, you notice it kind of whitewashes this photo. And really what's going to affect it is a couple things. One is mostly going to be the ISO setting of 200. And the f-stop is not too bad, but it can be a little higher. But anyway, it's getting too much light into the aperture, and the ISO is allowing more light to the sensor, which gives a kind of a whitewashed effect. You'll also notice on the Instagram, is this underexposed or overexposed on this Instagram? Mostly. How many think it's overexposed? It is. To the right's over, left under, remember? And so overexposure, this is pretty good here, right? The tree, the grass. Where you get the overexposure is right in here, in this region here, and that's what you're getting there. So inside of a factory or something, kind of reminds me of a Spider-Man movie where he's building the contraption, the evil man, the building a contraption. That kind of reminds me of that. Anyway, this is a shutter speed of 1/160th of a second, which is fairly fast. High f8, which means a low, an opening that's fairly, decent for aperture, and the f-stop or the ISO. So this one actually, to correct it, could add a little bit more ISO to it at a slower shutter speed than 1/160th of a second. We'll correct it. Because it's like it is, you've got basically in this picture a whole bunch of underexposure and a little bit of overexposure. Okay. Underexposure will be all this blackness here. You can't even make what it is. Well, plant stuff. Overexposure is going to be, it really doesn't, it is the histogram reaches overexposure. It's all this over here that's actually light. It's actually not bad, but it sees it as that because of the separation between the two. And then here's a outdoors shot at 1/100th of a second. F2.8 f-stop, unknown ISO. And it'll give you a fairly good representation of tone ranges, even though it's flat, but a lot of underexposure as well. And again, because of the sunset and the sunsetting on the horizon is going to be a part of that. Dynamic range. This is basically where the camera can record relative brightness and darkness. Dynamic range of a digital camera is not that big compared to film, and really not much to talk about on dynamic range, really more in the film world. Next is an article by Peter Eisenberger, which is on improving your photography, which is a good article. We'll go over that. Blow this up just a little bit. Okay, so he talks about, and he had an article he wrote on developing awareness of light and relation to the subject in your photographs. Talks about light and shadow becoming integral parts of a composition. Should be your first consideration before setting up a photograph. When lighting conditions have been evaluated and the camera position chosen to take best advantage of light-subject relationship, the next step is composing the photograph. Composing a photograph essentially is in the editing process, deciding what to leave in and what to leave out in the photo. And these first couple of weeks, I've been having you guys kind of look at photos in the first week. And just look at a different eye, have a different eye for photos, be looking at different things like for the rule of thirds, rule of composition. And he goes over some basics here in this next paragraph of good composition that when applied will give what he calls visual harmony and dynamic tension. Faithfully following all these rules will not culminate in a good photo, but it will help you in your venture, in your journey of taking good photos. So the rules are intended more as guidelines and a strict dogma. And so here's some of the basic ones he goes over. First is a strong focal point. Now, when you look at this picture initially, where does your eyes go to? How many, raise a hand, your eyes go to the tree first? How many, raise a hand, your eyes go to the woman standing on the edge of the mountain? Even though she's the smallest object in the entire image, right? But she's wearing, if you're looking at it from your computer, colorful clothing. Just makes her stand out a little bit more. But how many basically have, beside the tree, your eyes went somewhere else beside the tree and the person on the ledge? Anybody else went somewhere else first? Your very first time your eyes saw it? Because your eyes, if you didn't notice this, and I want you to notice it, when you look at a photo, your eyes will go to something first, then second, then third, then fourth, and fifth, so on and so forth. So if you stop for just a second and look at this photo, again, let's say you did notice her on the ledge, and then you're like, wow, she's pretty high up there. But initially, you might not have noticed that. You might have just noticed her on the ledge or on a rock, maybe. Then you noticed the ledge and the drop there. And then maybe you notice the tree behind her and the mountainous ranges beyond her. But that was after, that was like the third or fourth time your eyes rested on something. And basically, photography is basically where your eyes fall or your eyes focus on. And again, depending upon your mood that you're in, how happy you are, how sad you are, how excited you are, whatever, also depends upon your focal point as well. So it's usually the one main subject that we want to focus on in a photo that tells a true story, a successful story. The main subject can be one or several objects. It may also decide to include a secondary object. Make sure nothing detracts from the focal point. Lacking a strong center of interest forces a viewer to search for something to observe, to rest their eyes upon. And so, even though she's in a vast mountainous region and trees behind her, the photographer has put her in the focal point on a rule of thirds on the upper right quadrant, that she's pretty much by herself in that area. There's really not much distracting from her where she's standing, where he's taking the photo at. Next, it's usually best, again, to give the photo that force it. You want to basically, when you're taking a photo, you're thinking of the viewer and where you want them to view that focal point, and just give them enough room. Rule of thirds is, again, a good one. He recommends exact center of any composition is not satisfying, even though when we first start taking photos or start drawing or whatever, like we talked about the first week in class, we always go to the center, right? We always do. It's just human nature. It's a little off-putting to train yourself to think of something besides off-center, which rule of thirds forces you to do that. But the exact center is not a satisfying place for the viewers to rest their eyes. In fact, a lot of times when we put things in the center, people don't even look at the picture. It's just boring. They don't even look at it. They're like, don't care just by looking at it, just because it's centered. It's because it doesn't, there's no movement. There's no beyond what's in the picture type of feel. So it's preferable to keep the movement of the viewer's eyes moving and to create movement in a photograph and avoid the static bullseye, like middle of the image type of thing. Use a rule of thirds as guidelines to off-center your subject on the photo. So upper right quadrant, upper left quadrant, generally for people in groups. Traditionally, again, it's a way for years and years and years, well-balanced composition has been used by artists like Van Gogh for centuries and photographers for centuries. To apply the rule of third, imagine the scene in your viewfinder, and we talked about this last week, being divided by 3 lines horizontally into thirds, not 3 lines, but horizontally into thirds, horizontally and vertically, like a tic-tac-toe over your image, over your scene. Place the main subject on one of the important lines, or I call them the quadrants, which is the upper right here, upper left here areas of the image. And then basically employ the rule of thirds that not only helps some symmetry on composition, but also provides a pleasing proportional white space around the subject to where if a subject's over here on the left or over here on the right on this quadrant, it gets a more pleasing feel for the person looking at it. So this example here is a picture of the grid on an image in a desert, okay? And a common faux pas as far as compositionally is when the horizon is positioned directly through the middle of the frame, bisecting the scene. Utilizing rule of thirds like they've done on this one, you'll notice the horizon is on the top third and the land is the bottom 2/3. And vice versa, you can also bring water into that as well. It's a 1/3, 2/3, land, water, sky. You don't want it, right in the middle. And so utilizing the horizon is important on your grids. So in this example here, you'll notice on the photo, the land is about, roughly 1/3, maybe even less. The most of this is sky, okay? Most of it, 2/3 or more is sky. The other is land. And so just by moving your camera a little bit, you can cause that effect either way for the horizon line to be shown on your image. And that'll cause a dramatic sky, dramatic, interesting foreground. Will cause that decision on your end. Here we have simplicity. The best way to give a consistent message in a photo is a lot of times just being simple in the photo composition. So the fewer elements you have, the better. And there's several ways to simplify it. He goes over one is if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough. That's an important rule. So get closer. That's a real quick trick to getting a good photo. Zooming out doesn't help. It will not help. Zooming in a lot of times won't help. But literally physically getting closer will help perspective-wise from a camera's viewpoint. And also when you take the photo, it'll help you as well. Goes on and says that whether you physically move the camera position closer or zoom in optically, getting closer allows you to fill in the frame with the subject, paring the composition down to essential components. Because when you get closer to something, things go away that weren't there, were there before, that you don't see now in the frame. They're gone. Because the closer you get, even though you use a zoom, it's a mental thing. If I use a zoom on a far out image or photo setting, mentally I still see everything out there. I still see it. It still distracts me. But if I physically walk closer to what I'm taking a photo of, as I walk closer, those things that were my purview now begin to drop out, begin to get less distracted from the scene. That makes sense? So being closer, just walking closer is a good trick. Moving physically closer. It also removes the distractions from the frame, eliminates superfluous elements, and defocuses the background. Shallow depth of field helps to isolate the subject from the busy background by blurring it, and then may create soft pulls of complementary color. So here's an example of a photographer that maybe initially started way, way back, and then as they kept walking closer and closer, and saw these lines way, way back too, by the way, which looks pretty cool. Maybe saw these lines way, way back, but maybe to the left and right of this photo, we don't see it. There might have been ugly cactus there or an ugly tree or something, I don't know. But as he got closer, she got closer to the same lines that they saw early on, now have a different dimension. Now you've got the lines in the sand that are naturally created by wind. And then in the background, a really cool sky with a kind of cool mountain, objects, kind of rock objects here, which is kind of cool. And saying this one kind of leans to the horizon, a 1/3, 2/3, kind of a 1/3 sky, 2/3 land type of thing. But again, this photographer walked closer and made it simpler than trying to zoom in or try to do that. Just by physically getting closer is going to help and when you're taking photos, getting a better photo anyway. Leading lines is another one. Sometimes lines will be like this here, pretty predominant, right? These lines in the sand. Sometimes they won't be though. And so what you want to find out for, be creative on to create energy and movement is using leading lines. Whether they're graceful curves, dynamic diagonals, all lines should lead the viewers to the focal point. So if I go back up to the beginning photo that we looked at, everything in this image, if you notice, leads to the viewer. Now that we know about that, I'm going to blow this up just a little bit so I can see a little bit better. So look, the mountains. I'm taking my mouse and just going over the mountain traces here. And notice how most of the lines lead to that person. These 3 mountain lines lead right to her. If I start down here at the bottom, even though it's not a straight line, the line of this jaggedy edge leads to the person. The tree line, if I start up here at the top and go down, leads to the subject. So those are all lines maybe you didn't initially see, but now you do see them. And a photographer thought of that as they were positioning her in that frame. So again, this takes time to get and to understand and to practice, but hopefully you see a little bit better that, oh yeah, those all kind of come together now. I see how that works. When the viewer sees it, they don't see any of what we just talked about. They just know it works and the photo looks cool and they are like, wow, that's, it kind of gives you a feeling of kind of like awe, kind of looking at it like, I wonder what she's seeing beyond that prefaces that she's on. What is she looking at? We don't see that, see? That also gives that inquisitive, creative kind of leading the viewer to wanting more is what it's all about. And that's what it's definitely doing. Leading the viewer wanting more from that photo. Okay, going on down here towards the end here, he talks about other few factors in composition to pay attention to. On refining, he kind of wraps it up. Letting the lines in your composition decide if the scene should be shot horizontally or vertically. If the scene presents long vertical lines, compose vertically instead of just the normal horizontal photos that we take. When presented with strong horizontal lines, use a horizontal landscape type of position. This places strength of composition, avoid wasted space at the edges of your frame. Also be aware of white or light areas in your composition. The viewer's eyes will always go to the brightest part of the scene first. So eliminate any really bright spots. Like say if you have the sun over here and your scene's here and your first scene, maybe you take it like this and the sun's creeping in a little bit. Just move yourself to where the sun's out of the shot. It's not directly brightening any area of that photo. Also looking for a repetition in shapes and textures, patterns that create rhythm in the photo. Compose boldly using sweeping diagonal lines. Long horizontal lines can be static and visually boring. Conversely, diagonal lines add visual energy. I had a student last semester in their final portfolio took architecture building photos of Rockford, and they decided to take all their photos in a vertical viewpoint, meaning they would literally lay on the ground in front of the building or get pretty close to that stance and view the building from the ground level up, and took a photo that way at a different perspective and different lines and different perspective of the photo you maybe not seen before. And that's what it's all about too, is being bold in what you haven't, people normally don't lay on the ground to take a photo, right? And they're not going to see that unless they see a photographer do that generally. And so that's the whole reason to do it, is because people don't see things like that. Another one was a student went on the railroad tracks downtown by Mississippi and laid on the railroad tracks and took a really cool photo of the length of a railroad track and the ties there and the post along the way, just within a good 30, 40 yards view, which again had to get down to a level that people usually don't look at railroad tracks at, which was kind of cool. So you saw the creaks in the wood, you saw the rust on the rail. It was in the morning, so you even saw some dew showing up there. So it's just a different way to look at something that we all just drive by every day, and so all boring railroad tracks. So by giving a different perspective, being bold, using lines helps a lot. Wide angle lens, you don't need to worry about that this semester, but also he just scratched the surface. One of the big things that he mentions I like is the other side of the coin, he says. The other side of the coin is how to successfully break the rules of composition to create dynamic tension. And that's what I want you to try to do this semester, even though you'll go over a lot of rule of thirds and how to use your camera settings this semester. I give you freedom to break those rules and to be creative in your picture taking, to get a different picture from a different perspective that people normally in a normal walk of life don't get, right? Normal everyday walk. So it means having to, like an example, if you drive, anybody ever go to Galena before and drive on Highway 20, right? And they have a lookout about halfway between here and Galena. There's a lookout point where people always take photos. But there's also a path that cows take around there that you can get on. You got to watch out for cow patties, but if you get on this cow path, it really takes you on some cool scenes that you can take that you don't get from the public view kind of area. And so by going off the beaten path, a lot of times you can get photos that others will never see, maybe. Just by getting a little bit off. You don't have to get a lot off the beaten path, just a little bit. And it's going to help you in your photos, and it'll help you break up monotony of a trip or monotony of a scene that you've seen 100 times before just by looking at a different perspective. Okay, so that's that one. Yes, question.
When you say take a picture horizontal or vertical, are we holding our phone?
Yeah, so on your phone it would be
straight up and down. Like
phone would be, this would be landscape, right? Phone, landscape.
Mhm.
This would be portrait.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
And your lines on your photos that you're taking will determine, like in this classroom here, because of the width of our classroom and the lines of your desk, it would make sense to take this photo in portrait or landscape, you think? If I'm standing right here.
Landscape?
Landscape,
Because it's wider.
Because it's wider, it makes sense. And the lines are this way, they're horizontal.
Mhm.
But now if I go outside and I'm in Chicago on Michigan Avenue, and I'm walking down Michigan Avenue, and they have those cool churches and tall buildings all throughout Michigan Avenue, I might want to switch the camera to portrait mode and get some really cool visual shots of a building, maybe right up close to it or something like that. And so again, it's just the lines that you're given. Use those lines to determine the dimension and the orientation of your camera, whether it be a point and shoot camera or whether it be your phone. Good question. All right. In class, what I want you to do is with your camera, both your smartphone or your physical camera, either one. And if you haven't downloaded the app, I recommend it. You probably won't be able to get some of these on your camera, but some of you might already have been playing with some apps and you have some different apps on there than your static iOS or Android ones. But anyway, on your camera, what I want you to do, regardless what type of camera you have or what type of phone you're using, give me whatever app you're using. I want you to locate whatever settings you can find that's on this list, and maybe even more if they're not on this list, and go ahead and submit them in the text box entry below what settings you have. Like, for instance, in this example I give, you might have a camera that has auto, aperture mode, ISO mode, movie mode, close-up, sports, PA, MTV. If your digital camera app, you might have one that says close-up, family, photos, pets. Might be one called, brightness, might be called darkness, might be called whatever it is you have on your camera. Really doesn't matter. Just tell me what settings you have to choose from default on your camera app or your camera. So take about 5 minutes to do that. Bust out your camera or camera app to figure out what type of photo settings you have on your camera to play with. So we're going to do that real quick the next couple minutes. I'll turn the light back on here so you can see a little better. And again, just pull your camera out and just fire it up and fire up your app and see all the different modes. It says on the word settings, but it might be in your app. It might be called modes possibly that you can choose from. It might be auto mode, might be portrait mode, pet mode, kid mode, family, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Doesn't have to be these up here. And it doesn't have to be 10 of them. It can be however many you have. Yep. On the bottom there. Yep. On the bottom of your app there, it'll show all the different ones. Yep. That camera will be on the circle there. It'll show you and just tell me what they are, the letters. That's fine.
So is this like this one here, the panel, the P?
Yeah, because you have up here, you got a slow-mo, video, photo, square, and then up here, you got HDR. Yeah, you got more time lapse. So I want all of those on the bottom. So you want to put it. Everything you have on the bottom. Good. You want up? Yeah. Now, if you turn your camera on and you go to each one of those settings, it'll tell you when you get to that notch which one it is. See that? It'll explain it. It'll give at least a description anyway. And so those who do have a point and shoot or whatever normal point and shoot consumer camera, as you turn on your camera and flip the switches, it'll show you on your LED what those are. Or your smartphones, usually it's going to be at the bottom of your app as you slide over what those settings are. Well, there's a text entry and you're in week 3 in class. You just click on week 3 and then just keep clicking next to get to the end class. Good. This is submit assignment and put it in the settings. Good.
Where do we write this in there, or do we just go to the submit assignment?
Yep, submit assignment. You'll tap submit assignment and then type in
The text.
whatever
Oh, right here.
you have on your camera as the settings that you have there.
Where would I find these things?
Yours is going to be on the dial on the menu. So if you go to your menu, yeah, let me see your camera. So yours doesn't have the button. It should have a menu underneath, I believe. Okay, you've actually got these modes here on your dial. You got motion snapshot, smart photo selection, still images, movie. If you go to the still images, down here at the menu item, actually do this for me on yours. Just give me those 4 that you have. That's it. That's all I want from you.
Okay.
So with all those 4 items, that's all you need. Now, some of you will have like, say you have 4 or 5 items, but in each one of those items, there'll be a whole bunch of sub menus. I don't need the sub menus. I just need the default ones you have on your camera or app, either one.
What's the difference between smart photo software and?
You'll have to read your documentation on that because each camera can be different. Yes. Oh, okay. Well, let me see if you want to look at it. Yeah, let's submit to me the video settings section, which is resolution down to Pro 2. That's what I think. Nope. While you're still submitting yours, let me go over these. Are on the overhead anyway. You'll have something equivalent, most of you on your app or phone or camera. The auto mode is what I had you use. Most everybody used when I first started taking photos is the auto mode. Basically, that is that you have the camera do everything for you, whether it be setting light settings, white balance, ISO, aperture, shutter speed. It does it all for you. It's generally denoted by a green button or looks like a camera with a green tint a lot of times, or just green. Aperture mode affects the opening and closing of the aperture. When in aperture mode, for most of your cameras, it will automatically update the shutter speed. ISO mode for most of your cameras that have ISO mode, it'll either be in high ISO or low ISO, and that's it. An ISO, remember, manipulates the white or the light that the sensor views. Movie mode takes movies. Close-up photos of images of people, insects, macro type of mode. Sports, any type of movement. P mode is going to be the some of your cameras, the program mode, where you can go in and you can program different presets of programs. The A mode, you go in and set the application mode. Manual mode is M, where you can control the ISO generally and the aperture, shutter speed separately. And then the TV mode is going to allow you also to come in and set the auto TV of that to be able to control things like your ISO and aperture together. But you probably have other modes besides this on yours. Whatever you have, you'll learn about all of these as the semester goes on. SOSLR we've talked about in here up to week 3. Aperture, ISO. The one that's not in here is the shutter speed. But you might have a shutter speed mode also on some of yours, or an S mode for shutter mode. It'll tell you too when you go to that mode. It'll tell you what it's doing for you and what you can't do. Like for instance, if I go back to the last slide. If I'm in aperture mode on my camera, it'll say you can control the aperture mode. And as you control the aperture mode, the camera will automatically update the shutter speed. On the shutter mode, my camera will say you can update the shutter mode, but it's going to automatically manipulate the aperture mode for you. Make sense? So, and what's allowing that to happen is that sensor and the software built within your computers or your cameras or your apps, either one. Both of them are the same technology, by the way. Okay, so what you're going to do for contrast this week on your take home is you're basically going to take your week 3 photo album, create a week 3 photo album in your area, in your photo site. Most of you chose Flickr, I believe. And what you're going to do, basically walk around campus, the mall, your place of work, wherever it is you normally go. You don't have to go anything outside your beating path of the day, of the week. This is Tuesdays, so you can get this done between Tuesday and Friday, no problem. So whatever you normally do. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to take 3 photos of each of the below settings. And when I say the word settings here, I mean a photo setting. Like if I'm taking a picture of these printers, that's a photo setting. If I'm taking a picture over here, it's a photo setting. Photo setting. So photo setting are your camera dials. They aren't your camera settings. It's the actual photo setting that you're looking at taking a picture of. So take 3 pictures of each of the below photo settings that give itself to good contrast. After transferring the files to your computer or on your phone, you're going to rename them. When you upload them to Flickr or wherever you're hosting, label the photo what type of photo it is, whether it be nature, people, so on and so forth. And so what you're going to focus on this week is the settings of ISO and white balance. On the white balance, you're going to do auto and presets. Do not use manual white balance this week. For ISO, I want you to choose 3 ranges only in the ISO. So let's say, for instance, you might not have 100, 200, 300, but you have 100, 300, 500. That's fine. So whatever your lowest 3 are in succession, that's the one you're going to choose. Might be 800, 100, 200. Just as long as you start with the lowest ISO range and then the next 2. So first photo setting is nature. So you're going to find some nature setting, be it your house, be it your work, be it here on campus. And you're going to basically take 3 photos. Well, I gave you the example here of the gazebo you're familiar with here on campus, right? Or by Student Center. So I take 3 pictures of the gazebo in the same setting. I'm standing in the same place. And I change the ISO on my camera to 200. And then the white balance to sunny white. Then 300 shade on white balance. 400 ISO, then auto white balance. Then I look at these later when I go home, and I decide that when I upload all 3 of these, that the number 2 one, the middle one, the nature 2 with the 300 ISO is the best one. And so in the actual photo album, you're going to label just like this on your photo album. So I will label each photo accordingly. Nature 1, 200 ISO sunny white balance. Nature 2, 300 ISO shade white balance. But let's say on your camera, you do 80, 100, 120 or something. I don't know, whatever the first 3 is. And then the one that you like the best, you'll put in parentheses the best. And again, you don't have to label these until you upload them to your Flickr site, to your Flickr album. Then you can label them then. People gathering is the next one. You're going to find a place where people are gathering, the student center, or if you get permission from a classroom or whatever, or your workplace, family, doesn't really matter. Some place where people are gathering. Same exact thing, except you're going to replace nature with people. Same exact settings too, by the way. 200, 300, 400. Same exact settings on my white balance. Sunny, shade, and auto. Now, can you choose different white balances than I put here? Sunny, shade, or auto? Definitely you can. Just make sure they're the 3 the same that correspond with the ISO. That makes sense? So if you do an 80 shade on the first one for nature, you're going to do on the first one for people here, 80 shade. Make sense? And then select which one you want, like the best. Again, it's a subjective best contrast, but you're viewing it from your computer, from your phone, with your best contrast that you think it is. Then vehicles, setting like our WTC parking lot would be an example. Same exact thing, except you're renaming it from nature and people to vehicles, but the same ISO setting, corresponding to the same white balance setting. Now, on the white balance, everybody has to use auto white. Auto has to be assigned to the highest ISO you have all the time. But the other two white balances for the first and second level ISO that you have can be whatever you want it to be, just as long as they're the same on each one. That makes sense? I just put in there sun and shade. You can use exactly what I just put up here if you want to. You don't have to. You can use something else if you want to. Make sense so far? Okay. Then other, you're going to basically say go to the mall, or you go to a sporting event, or you go to the BMO or whatever. You go to your kid's sister, kid brother's school event, and you take some photos there. Same deal, same exact thing, except you're changing the name of the location of that photo setting. Once you're finished, all of those will be uploaded into your photo album accordingly and be named like this here on the overhead. So you should end up with, in your photo album this week for week 3, 6, 9, 12 photos, and labeled accordingly to what you had, what ISO setting and white balance setting. And then each set, nature, people, vehicles, and mall, you'll put in parentheses the word best on what you think the best exposure is. Okay. And I'm not going to argue with you on that exposure because it's a subjective. At this point, I want it to be subjective. I want you to choose, without me influencing that decision right now, what you think the best exposure is. Make sense? Questions on the assignment? Okay. So if you have any questions about anything, come and see me. You can definitely, this week you're not going in groups like you did last week, and I will have that collage by next week. If you have any questions on anything, come see me. Next week when you come to class, the iPad will be up and running 15 minutes prior to class. You can check in. Make sure and save that QR code to your phone if you haven't done so already. Or if I need to help you before you leave with that, come and see me. Or if you have any questions about the assignment, come see me before you leave. Otherwise, see you next week. Yeah.
I have a question. So you said it'd be 3 in a row, or because mine?
What's your start on that?
Well, mine goes up to like it goes high. Like 2.
What's your first 3?
My first 3?
Do your first 3.
Would be 100, 105.
Does that work? That's going to what you're going to
All right.
focus on. Yep. First 3. Good. Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember which one this came on.